Frank Schwab, Jason Fitz, inside coverage. We are sitting here right now. The Sunday night football game has just come to a close, mercifully, if you want to say it that way, for the Buffalo Bills. Because, Frank, the Bills, the number one team in your power rankings, the number one team for most people coming into this weekend, just got taken by the back of the shed, and they got their butts whooped. And I did mean to say tooken, all right? That's just what happened. Like, the Bills took it to him, or I should say the Ravens took it to him, Frank. It was ugly.
Oh, it was, yes. And yeah, obviously you knew that was a possibility coming in, especially in this NFL season where we were just talking about old school wrestling and the Mr. McMahon documentary before we started taping. So to quote the late, great Roddy Piper, just when they think they have the answers, I change the questions. That's the NFL this year. And yes, the Bills can look great for 3 weeks and then just get blasted. I mean, that was just from beginning to end, from the time Derrick Henry took off on that 87-yard run. It was just, they were completely outclassed. Now, I'll say this, Fitz, that I don't really come out of this feeling that much worse about the Bills. I'm not like, oh, no, the Bills got exposed. It just happens sometimes. The Ravens are a really, really good football team. They match up well with the Bills in some areas. They took advantage of some of their weaknesses. Henry went off. And it's just one of those. I used to cover the Bucs back in the day. George Karl was there. He had a great phrase, and I think I've used it on shows before. He called it a gong game, and we were like, what's that, George? And he's like, well, the game's so bad that you just bang the gong and you move on. You don't think about it anymore. You don't even watch a film. It's just one of those nights that just gets away from you, and I think that's what it was for the Bills. I don't think that anything was exposed here. I don't think they're in trouble. I just think they ran up against a really, really good Ravens team that didn't want to go 1-3, and that's what happened.
Yeah, ran is the key word here. Derrick Henry ran 24 carries, 199 yards, 8.3 yards per carry average, but also Justice Hill. I mean, Justice Hill, a backup running back, 6 carries, 54 yards, 6 catches. This is the alarming part of all of this, Frank. They have a 2-time MVP that is in the prime of his career at the quarterback position, and for the second straight week, they barely need him to win games. Like, think about what we're saying here. They have just decided, hey, we are going to do this to you until you can figure out how to stop it. Nobody can stop it. And as a result, it's almost like you're conserving your need from your 2-time MVP while you are watching your offense be everything I thought it could be when we came into the season. This is absolute sheer dominance for Baltimore.
Absolutely. And I mean, what did we talk about many, many months ago? It seems like ages ago, but after they lost the AFC Championship game, we got on this show, the Sunday night show, and we were like, how could the Ravens completely just ignore the running game? How could they just forget to run the ball? And we said that a lot of times over the offseason, and also said, well, now that they got Derrick Henry, that ain't happening again. And it won't. I think what happened tonight was the Ravens figuring out, and did this last week too, Derrick Henry has a loss of step at age 30. I don't know how this is possible, Fitz. Like, I mean, he's a guy who his workload, even if you go back to Alabama and even high school, really, if we want to get that deep, his workload has been unlike anything we have seen since like the 80s when it was common for guys to just get 30 carries a game. This doesn't happen in the modern era. He's 30 years old. He's a big back. So you'd figure he'd be wearing down. But yet when he broke the line of scrimmage on this first run of the game, you knew, oh, nobody's catching him. He's just a freak. He is one of the most unique, fun players that I've ever watched, ever covered. Derrick Henry is awesome. And I think the Ravens have discovered Derrick Henry still has it. We can give him as many carries as we can handle, like he can handle. Like, there's no limit. I don't think Derrick Henry's ever tapping out of a game. Like, he's just like, carry 27, carry 28. Sure. You're going to get the 30, 35. I don't care. Keep giving me the ball. It's worse on the defense trying to tackle me than it is on me. So I think now that the Ravens have figured that out, which they lost week 2, they did not know that. They went away from Henry in the fourth quarter, let the Raiders get back in that game. I don't think that happens again. I think Todd Monken and John Harbaugh, they have figured out, yeah, Derrick Henry is our ticket here. He could carry us a really long way, and when we get to the playoffs, not going to be all on Lamar's shoulders. One real quick fact. I love this fact, Fitz. I think this is really cool. That 87-yard run, the longest run in Baltimore Ravens history. Derrick Henry is the only player who has the longest run for 2 different franchises. Obviously, the 99-yarder with the Titans is their longest run in history. Now he also has the longest run in Ravens history. Only player to have the longest run for 2 different franchises. I just think that's kind of a cool tidbit. But the big story out of here is just, yeah, this Ravens offense is a lot different with Derrick Henry. They've never had a back like this before in the Lamar Jackson era.
The number is 4 for this game. 4 is the number of completions in this entire game to wide receivers. Like, again.
That's it? Wow. I didn't even realize that. I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were only...
Obviously, none of Mark Andrews either, I don't think, because that might be a problem. But anyway.
Yeah, 14 completions overall. Lamar was 13 of 18. 14 completions overall because Josh Johnson got in there at the end. So 14 completions overall. What's amazing is 6 of them went to Justice Hill. 3 of them went to Derrick Henry. So 9 of those 14 went to running backs. And 1 went to Isaiah Likely. 1 went to none went to Mark Andrews. 1 went to Isaiah Likely. Oof. So you start looking at the numbers. This Baltimore Ravens team completed 4 passes to wideouts, and then just beat arguably the only team we've been able to look around and say, this team here, this team is great. We know one team is great, the Bills. And they got just hammered giving up 4 completions to wideouts.
Fitz, do you disagree with me at all? Are you worried about the Bills? Do you think anything was exposed here, or was it just one of those nights where you ran up against a buzzsaw?
No, I think the entire league has spent most of the last several years trying to figure out how to defend spread offenses and how to figure out how to spend quick passing games, quarterbacks that are throwing the ball right away. They've become so mobile as a defense, so spread out as a defense that now we finally have a team that's come in and built to the opposite direction. We have a team that's come in and said, okay, while everybody is built to do this, we're going to run the ball right at you. And we're going to run the ball on the edges. We're going to run the ball up the middle. And we're going to do it with somebody that's just absolutely freaking huge. So now all of a sudden you got guys, every defensive player has to make a business decision to take him down.
Everyone. Somebody pointed out that Derrick Henry basically posted the same speed on his long run today as Xavier Worthy did on his. Like Xavier Worthy, who set the combine record for the fastest 40 time ever, was like 0.1 faster than this 247-pound, 30-year-old running back. Like, we've never seen a guy like this. Like, I know they were trying to compare him to Eric Dickerson, and that is a good comparison, but Derrick Henry is one of one, man. He is just so unique, and he should be done by now. He should have been done 3-4 years ago with his workload, but he's still, like, I think this is 49 carries the last 2 weeks for Derrick Henry, and he just looks fresh and good, and like, yeah, don't worry about me, guys. Again, like you say, worse on the defense than it is on me. Just keep giving me the ball. That is totally a throwback. You just don't see that anymore in this era of committees. And Henry he's just different than everybody else.
They're about to take on the Ravens, are about to take on the Bengals, the Commanders, the Bucs, the Browns, the Broncos, and the Bengals again. That's 6 straight games where I would argue that maybe we could say the Buccaneers. None of the other teams that I mentioned have anything on the defensive line that makes me think they're going to slow down Derrick Henry in this running attack.
Broncos, maybe. Broncos, we'll get to them. But the Broncos might be a difficult one. But yes, I mean, the Ravens started 0-2, and it was like, ooh, this is a bad place to be. But now it's like, well, you're 2-2, and you're probably going to get out a pretty nice streak right here.
Now, obviously, anytime we talk about the great teams in the league, one of the teams we have to mention are the Kansas City Chiefs because, as I've told you a million times, I'm done betting against them. But, man, another tough game for Kansas City, another ugly offensive effort for Kansas City. They get a win, and this is what they do. You know, how many weeks in a row are you and I going to say the only time that you're ever going to play Patrick Mahomes, you're going to play him in a close game? That's what happens, and he doesn't lose close games. It happened again. Kansas City wins 17-10 over the Chargers in a game that, you know, frankly, I thought the Chargers were going to shock the world. They just couldn't get it done in the end. Kansas City does. But most importantly, Rashee Rice, potentially a torn ACL. We don't know the full damage of it, but you want to talk about an offense that's already just looked hard. Nothing looks easy for this offense, and it may have just got more difficult. And I want to make that a big deal, Frank, but let's be honest. This offense hasn't looked good for a year and a half, and they still just won a Super Bowl, and they still, at this point, just win every week.
I know. At some point, this reaches critical mass, though. I mean, they've lost Isaiah Pacheco, lost Hollywood Brown. It looks like they've lost Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce, he had a really nice revival game today. Maybe that's just a sign that Travis Kelce is going to come alive for a little bit. They need him because he was kind of a ghost before that. I mean, they have issues at left tackle. Like, this is an offense dealing with a lot of things right now, and it's not just going to be so easy as, oh, well, we'll just make the playoffs and make another Super Bowl. They might, because Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are so great. That's why they keep winning these one-score games. Nobody should be able to win. I think it's like 7 or 8 straight wins by 7 or fewer points, which tied some records since whatever. I wish I could say the stat right now, but it's really rare that you win this many close games in a row. The Chiefs have a knack for it, and there's a reason. It's not just luck, but it also proves that their margin of error is not as high as you would think from a back-to-back Super Bowl champion who's trying to go for a third one. Every game for them is kind of a coin. Today was a coin flip. They were down 10-zip. They finally, really started to figure out how to get pressure on Justin Herbert against those backup tackles. Defense came through in a big way. The offense did just enough, but at some point, we're thinking about great teams, and the Chiefs undoubtedly are, but you do want to see them beat somebody 34-0. That's what the 89 49ers did, and that's what, the 2007 Patriots did, and we don't see that a lot from the Chiefs, and you just wonder, their margin of error is relatively slim comparatively to other great dominant teams, and Rashee Rice going down really erases that. He is everything to that offense so far this season. We talked about last week how lucky they were that he didn't get suspended, and now what do you do? Xavier Worthy is a good player, obviously, but he's not going to be some Malik Neighbors 17 targets off the bus kind of rookie. I don't see that happening. I don't know the counterpunch here unless it's Kelsey coming alive again, which good signs, but they're in trouble. Not that they can't figure out this trouble they have before, but to just be like, oh, it's the Chiefs, they're going to win another Super Bowl because they just do. It's getting harder and harder to just buy into that with all the issues they're dealing with.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Everything you just said makes sense. What doesn't make sense is if we Google NFL standings right now, we will see atop of those standings a 4-0 Chiefs team. And so, I hear you that the dam has to break and you can't continue. I always say when I'm watching games, better to be lucky than good. I say if I had a shot every time I'd say that, I wouldn't be able to stumble out of a bar. Better to be lucky than good. But as I've said on this show, at some point, it's not luck. It's your identity with the Chiefs. They do it again. The Chargers punched him in the mouth over and over and over again. And at the end of that game, you just knew. You knew Kansas City was going to find a way. So I hear you, and I agree with you that it doesn't make sense. There isn't a moment here where I sit here and say, you know what, I'd bet my house on this because it's hard to bet your house on something that you can't apply any logic to. But yet they win. They continually win all of these games. I don't know how you beat the Kansas City Chiefs because they, frankly, even when they beat themselves, they still beat you. It's a weird magic, man. It's to deal with the devil. I don't know what it is, but all it does is lead to victories.
But right now, I do agree. But right now, you look around and their skill position guys are a rookie and Xavier Worthy, who's obviously very talented, but he's not going to be a high volume guy. It's Justin Watson. It's a 35-year-old Travis Kelce who came into this game with 69 yards for the whole season. It's Kareem Hunt, who looked terrible last year, was unsigned until a week and a half ago. Okay, if you do it this year, then it's just nobody's ever going to beat the Chiefs again because this is a kind of a scary situation. I think they got to get on the phones. I think, assuming Ray Rice's injury is serious, which it looked that way, and all indications are, it's probably an ACL. We'll find out for sure on Monday. If it's a season-ending type of injury for Rashee Rice, I think they got to get on the phones and start talking to some of these, 0-4, 1-3 type of teams and being like, hey, Jaguars, you want to give up one of these receivers? We'll give you a pick. I don't know that they could go with this cast the rest of the year and just expect to ball out during the playoffs and win. Maybe it happens because, like you said, it's logic doesn't always apply. Logic didn't apply the last season's Super Bowl. The Chiefs were not the best team in football, but they won a Super Bowl. Maybe the same thing happens. But yet I just look at this team and I'm like, I don't know how they're going to keep playing at this unbelievable level all season.
One thing I will say for Kansas City is they may have a minute to get it figured out. They have a Monday night game against the Saints, and then they get their bye week. So they get an extra week off before they then take on the 49ers. So they've got a little bit of time here. Should they, as everybody immediately is going to flock to the internet and say, are they going to trade for somebody? Are they going to make a big move? If they make a big move, if they make a move of any sort, they've got time to get somebody sort of worked in because of the timing of the Monday night game and the bye. I, right now, do not want to believe in the Kansas City Chiefs. By everything that we've talked about, by everything we saw in this game, there is zero reason to buy into the Kansas City Chiefs until you look at the fact that all they do every time there's zero reason to buy into them is win. So I can't bet against them. I can only bet on them at this point. I can't figure out a better answer. I am also now at this point buying in hardcore on one of the absolute just beast performances of the day. We thought that Arizona, Washington would be an offensive explosion because both sides were bad defensively.
One was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was yet another. I said earlier that the number of the day was 4. Well, I'll echo that again. The number of the day was 4 for Jayden Daniels. 4 was how many incompletions Jayden Daniels threw in an absolute thorough butt whooping, where all of a sudden we keep sitting there and saying, man, C.J. Stroud was one of a kind. That's never going to happen. Jayden Daniels, 26 of 30 for 233 and a touchdown in the air. Absolute domination from him. Unstoppable. By the way, also a touchdown on the ground. We can continue to watch the ascension for the second straight year of an unstoppable rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And I like to get excited about things. Like it's always weird to be like throwing cold water on everything. And I'm really excited for this Jayden Daniels thing, but I never want to get too hyperbolic, right? Like you never want to be crazy. I'm not out here hot taking and everything, but I do think right now we're getting to the point of remember what this is like, because we're going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road being like, hey, do you remember Jayden Daniels' rookie year? Do you remember how awesome he was? Like, I really believe that. Like, we talk about RG3 12 years later. Like, I say RG3 rookie year, and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember it. The Monday night game, him running down the sideline, all that. The same thing's happening with Jayden Daniels right now. This is really impressive. A few things out there, facts about his hot start. The best completion percentage over a 4-game stretch of any quarterback. I'm not just talking rookies. Any quarterback, any 4-game stretch since like 1950. He's ahead of 2008 Peyton Manning and 2007 Tom Brady. Okay, like that's how accurate he has been so far. I get a lot of short passes early, but it's been a normal offense the last couple of weeks, and he just completes passes. And then they punted this week for the first time since the fourth quarter of week 1. They only punted once today. That's unbelievable with a rookie quarterback. They had 9 possessions today and scored on 7 of them. I think it was 2 field goals, 5 touchdowns. And they punted once and 1 interception. The first interception of Jayden Daniels' career in the 4th game. An offense should not score every single time it gets the ball with Patrick Mahomes a quarterback, or 1989 Joe Montana, or 2007 Tom Brady. And they got a kid playing his first 4 games in the NFL, and they practically score every single time they have the ball. It's really remarkable. And it's not like this Commanders team just has star after star, like we talked about the Bears supporting cast for Caleb Williams. Brian Robinson's an okay running back. And Terry McLaurin's good number 1, but he's not great. And who's really their number 2? And Zach Ertz is an aging tight end. But it's just Jayden Daniels. Like, he is then that good. And I am getting to a point where I'm like, what we're watching is special. And all these Commanders fans, I know a lot of them. I hear from my buddy Jake all the time, who's been waiting for this, right? They dealt with so many bad years with Daniel Snyder, right? Not to just invoke Daniel Snyder's name, but just to give some perspective on where this fan base was. They're so beaten down. They haven't had anything really other than the RG3 season to really get excited about. And now you're seeing something happen in front of your eyes, and you know this is special. You know we're watching something historic right now. We're in on the ground floor of this, and we could dream so big for the next 10, 15 years, whatever it's going to be, with this guy who looks like another comet, like C.J. Stroud. I didn't think it would happen again, but Jayden Daniels, wow. He is the story of the NFL season so far. Absolutely.
Jayden Daniels is living, breathing proof of why we are all so obsessed with the NFL draft. Because if you hit on a quarterback, 2 things happen. Number 1, you get your guy for the next 10 to 15 years. So you don't even have to worry about the position if you get your guy. But number 2, you change the entire perception of your organization. Because to your point, think about the way we were talking about Washington anytime anybody talked about Washington a few months ago or a year ago, right? The major difference here isn't just that, they're fun to watch, that they put up a bunch of points today against Arizona. The major difference here, and you could see it from the shots of the crowd in the stadium, the major difference is the fire, the juice. Everybody looks at it and you see your team differently. You feel different about Sunday when you wake up because you have a quarterback. Like, the power that comes from the hope of drafting a quarterback is absolutely palpable, and we're seeing it in Washington. It engages everybody. Even if you aren't a Washington fan and you were sitting in a sports bar today, you were glued to this just to see what Jayden Daniels does. And it feels so good when your franchise has let you down year in and year out, when you've stunk for so long. It feels so good in a very real way to finally be one of the embraced, to finally feel like, man, the casual fan is actually rooting for you, not against you, that people just sitting around that don't have a rooting interest want to care about your team. That all comes from getting it right at the quarterback position. And I felt that today for the second straight week in every possible way about Jayden. That's so powerful.
We've both experienced this where it's like, you're going to go out and, hey, I'm getting my Washington Commanders shirt on because I want somebody to start a conversation with me. Oh, you're a Commanders fan? Heck yeah, I see Jayden Daniels. Like, that's what's going on right now. Like, this is the exciting time to be a fan. And even if you're not a Commanders fan, if you just like ball, you should be so impressed with what Jayden Daniels has done. He just dominated the SEC last year. We forget sometimes, like, the SEC really is the NFL's junior varsity. Like, there are a lot of NFL caliber players playing in that league. And so maybe we should have seen this coming where he could just step into this right away. But this is still so rare. It's really freakish. Like, for Jayden Daniels to be this good this fast, re-energize a fan base. Like, they're first place in the NFC East right now. And I don't know, like, did we think, like, early on in RG3's rookie year that Washington was going to win that division? Probably not, but they did. Why can't Washington win this division? Why can't Washington be a hard out in the playoffs? I mean, even with all their flaws, if you just draft the quarterback who's just just this once in a lifetime type of generational dude, the term we throw around a lot, Jayden Daniels seems to be that. It just raises your ceiling so much. Look at the Houston Texans last year. It's just fun. It is. I am so excited. I just want to see Jayden Daniels play again. I'm nothing for the Commanders. I mean, we joke about my Commanders because I talk about them a lot in the offseason, how I thought they could be good. I'm not even a Commanders fan, but yet I can't wait to look up who they play next week and when, and I'm going to be glued to that TV the whole time. That's what Jayden Daniels is doing for the entire NFL right now.
Their next 3 games: Cleveland, Baltimore, Carolina. So this hype train could keep going all over the place. Let me ask you real quick, from the Cardinals standpoint, I mean, we watched Kyler Murray sort of get beat up. We watched Kyler Murray not look particularly great. And we watched the Cardinals just not have their offensive line, didn't have an answer. It was a pretty pathetic performance from Arizona. It should be noted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, if you do want to throw some cold water on Jayden Daniels, you do say, well, the Bengals defense is not very good right now because of how beat up they are. Maybe the Cardinals are just bad. Like, the Cardinals have looked pretty bad other than the blowout of the Rams, which is one of those kind of weird results that I don't even know what to do with right now, because other than that, Kyler Murray's been pretty average. And Marvin Harrison hasn't exactly been Malik Neighbors. And this offense hasn't been as good as we thought they'd be. They got just blasted today by a Commanders team I still think has a lot of flaws. Don't get me wrong. I don't know what to make of this Cardinals team right now. I thought they were going to be better, especially on offense, and they're just not. And the defense I thought would be bad, and they were really bad today. You just wonder if the Cardinals are in for a long season, because this was not a pretty performance by them in any way.
All right, let's get to one other big game from today that I think was interesting, because, Frank, it's rare that a game can prove me right and wrong all at once in one game. And I feel like, as hard as I've been loudly on all of our shows about Jordan Love, I feel like the Vikings-Green Bay game proved me right and proved me wrong. Right? In the first half of that thing, Jordan Love looked absolutely awful. They're just getting run out of the building. Like, we're sitting here, it was almost like the Georgia-Alabama game. Like, it was absolutely embarrassing. And then all of a sudden, you look up 10 minutes later, and Jordan Love is hot, and you've got a close game here. The Vikings pull out a 31-29 win, where Green Bay scored 22 points in the fourth quarter. And Jordan Love, who had 3 picks in this game, and the numbers looked abysmal, actually finishes with okay numbers. But this was a little bit of what we've seen in Jordan Love's entire career put into one game. Like, Jordan giveth, Jordan taketh away. So, like, there's just this moment for me where I'm not sure what to expect. I know everybody talks about having to knock the rust off and all of these things. We just make a lot of excuses for why, particularly so far in the 2 games we've seen Jordan Love this year, he's been inaccurate to me.
Honestly, I mean, this is probably unfair. You could correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I just kind of throw out the fourth quarter, because we see it happen, and it shouldn't happen. I get it. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. They should never let down. But when you're up that much and you are just killing a team, you just have a tendency to fall asleep. You're like, we got this one. We're fine. And then all of a sudden, a guy like Jordan Love can get hot and put it on you real quick. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, we got to recover this onside kick, or we might blow this game. I don't even look at the fourth quarter. Good for Jordan Love to get hot. He did look rusty at first 3 quarters, but a lot of that just had to do with the Vikings. I look at this game, and I take this as the first 3 quarters. I watched a team in the Vikings that looks like a Super Bowl contender to me, and it looks like they have an MVP candidate at quarterback. I didn't look. I was as hard as anybody on Sam Darnold in the offseason. I said, what are they even doing? They wasted their money on this guy. He's not an NFL quarterback. Well, he is. He's playing as well as anybody. They led 28-7 after 3 quarters. Very reminiscent of the 49ers game a couple weeks ago, when the 49ers had 7 points after 3 quarters. When the Texans had 7 points after 3 quarters. They got to finish games better. You don't want the fourth quarter like that, obviously. But I look at it like the only points the Packers scored is when the Vikings muffed a punt at their own 3-yard line. Like that's it. They could get nothing going. Brian Flores' defense was tipping every pass Jordan Love threw up there. Sam Darnold was just hitting everybody. Jordan Addison's back in the lineup. He scores 2 touchdowns. If we just eliminate what we thought about the Vikings in the preseason, this is a Super Bowl contender. Like they have the best set of quality wins you could have. I mean, to really dominate against the 49ers, the Texans, and the Packers, we thought all three of those teams could be Super Bowl contenders this year. Well, if you dominate all three of those teams, doesn't that make you a Super Bowl contender? So we didn't see this coming necessarily, but if you start to get rid of your preconceived notions of the Vikings, they have all the ingredients, man. And they haven't even, they missed 2 games with Addison. They haven't had TJ Hawkinson yet. Ivan Pace has been out. Dallas Turner missed last week. It's not like they've been some picture of health. There's a really, really good, well-coached football team. And so, yeah, your points of Jordan Love, I just look at it like, I just kind of throw it out a little, the whole thing, because he was rusty coming off the injury for the first 3 quarters. Brian Flores' defense is screwing with everybody right now. Got hot in the 4th quarter. You'll take some momentum out of that. Jordan Love will feel better next game. To me, this game was all about the Vikings and them announcing to the world, hey, you thought we were some cute early season story, but we're not going anywhere. All of this is not a fluke. The Vikings are a very, very good football team this year.
To your point, look at who they've beaten. The 49ers, the Texans, the Packers in 3 straight weeks. Those are 3 teams that right. And those are 3 teams that are getting a ton of street cred, right? Those are 3 teams that we believe are good teams this year. So to get those wins the way they got those wins, you're right. I mean, this just keeps rolling. Like, there is, at this point, it's such an oversimplification, but I always look at, like, what are teams that you look on the schedule and say, man, that's going to be a tough win. Like, and as we get into a month into the season, we have a pretty good idea if the opposing fan base is going to look at that one and be like, well, that's probably an L. That's where I am with the Vikings. I don't think that there's any reason, you look at their upcoming game against the Jets, and we'll get to the Jets in a minute, but, I don't see any reason to believe that the Jets are a better team than the Vikings. I look across the board. The Vikings have done everything you can ask them to do. And as we said last week, they're incredibly well, their head coach is obviously brilliant. They're incredibly well coached. Their defensive coordinator is one of the best in the league at this point. So that defense is going to show up. And Sam Darnold continues to play really good, efficient football. And that's just
like, do you think this is repeatable for Sam Darnold? Like, there is something in the back of my mind saying, I know you're saying all these things and you're making them out to be a Super Bowl team, but yet if we are sitting here in 3 weeks on the Sunday night show and being like, well, Sam Darnold turned it over 4 times, like, it wouldn't surprise me that much, but I don't know. Like, it's such an odd story that this guy who was left for dead by a couple teams in bad situations, all of a sudden he's signed to be a bridge guy, basically. Keep the seat warm until J.J. McCarthy gets in. All of a sudden he's playing at an MVP level. Like, do you think this keeps up all season? Like, at the end of the season, let me simplify it. At the end of the season, do you think Sam Darnold gets MVP votes?
Yes. I think the reason
I say that, right?
Because at this point, we need to change. We need to shift our conversation about Kevin O'Connell, their head coach, into the same realm that we talk about, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah,
and my belief is that there are certain guys you can say, hey, this is such a good fit. And we've talked about the fact that the second year in a Shanahan system, everything sort of clicks. Well, I think what you've got is Sam Darnold in a Shanahan system using similar language where it is clicked, and it's clicked with the head coach that knows how to get the most out of him. I don't right now think the conversation about Sam Darnold is going to end up much different than the conversation is about Brock Purdy. We're going to sit here and say, hey, certain coaches and certain quarterbacks just get the best out of each other. And I think the Vikings have found that. We have plenty of football left ahead of us, but right now I'd be shocked because to me, you got a coach that is just whispering the right things in the ear of the quarterback at the right times, and it has him playing really smart, efficient, clean football while he's also still pushing the ball down the field, and he's doing it with one of the best wide receivers in the game. And I heard C-Mac talking about, some of the 50-50 balls that are up there. Quarterbacks are damned if they do and damned if they don't. When you have Justin Jefferson, if you don't throw a 50-50 ball out there, then everybody's going to turn around and say, well, why aren't you utilizing your weapons? I think right. Sam Darnold's doing exactly what Kevin O'Connell is teaching him to do. And this is an example of, I don't think with any other quarterback on any other team, Sam Darnold would be a dominant player in the NFL. I think on this team, with this coach, with this staff, this is what makes Sam Darnold dominant.
Yeah. And you talk about, it's funny with the 50-50 balls for Justin Jefferson. Actually, nothing's a 50-50 ball. It's always a better than 50-50 for Justin. But that touchdown, like, the ball got, like, he's covered as well as he could be covered as an NFL cornerback covering a receiver. And it kind of hits him in the chest, and he just sticks onto it. I watched it replay like 10 times. So I'm like, how on earth did he catch that? Like, that's one of those Justin Jefferson plays. So when you got a guy like that, and again, I said this before, but I need to repeat it. Jordan Addison has missed half of their season so far. TJ Hawkinson, when healthy, one of the 5 best tight ends in football, has not played yet. Who knows if he's going to be fully, recovered from the ACL, but this is a team that can actually get better. Like, their offense, And especially as Kevin O'Connell gets more comfortable with what Sam Darnold can and can't do. And what, Sam gets his timing down better with Justin and all these things. Like, I don't see this falling off. I see them getting better. Because why wouldn't they get better with Addison kind of back in the flow and when Hawkinson comes back? It's an exciting team because it's one of those rare teams that comes out of absolutely nowhere. I thought they'd finish last in the division. I'm not going to fool anybody here. I wasn't high on them coming into the season, and yet here they are. And legitimately, if you just look at the film, they're one of the best, if not the best NFL team so far.
And we're a couple of weeks away from the Vikings-Lions matchup that I cannot wait for. It will teach us much about both teams. We learned a lot about the rest of the games, too. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll start breaking down some of the rest of the action from Sunday. Frank, plenty of games out there today that sort of blew my mind, and I want to get right to one that is going to have just the media absolutely yelling and screaming into the abyss because the Denver Broncos beat the New York Jets 10-9 in a game that I feel like set back football and the eyeballs of football fans for a generation. Like, it's just, there's some games that are so ugly. Denver had a chance to make it a 2-score game and missed a field goal. That gave the Jets the field position. And then after, pass interference penalty, they drive down. They have the chance to kick the game-winning field goal. They missed the game-winning field goal. And I thought it just sort of epitomized this game. You had two teams that just sat there and were playing sloppy, ugly football. And when they needed to kick to win, couldn't do that, which is sort of what happened the whole game. They couldn't make plays when they needed to.
Absolutely. And as Greg Zuerlein was lining up for that 50-yard field goal, I was just sitting there saying to myself, he's going to miss. You know why? Because that's just the way this game has gone for the Jets. Like, this has just been horrific for them. We talked about how great the Jets looked against the Patriots. Well, they gave all that back. They looked terrible today. Bo Nix in the first half had -7 yards passing. He did not have one completion that gained positive yards. But yet I looked up and I'm like, well, they're only down 6-zip. Like, the Jets can't move the ball. Aaron Rodgers was getting pressured the whole time, getting hit by the end of the game. Breece Hall on a huge play just absolutely whiffs on his assignment and gets Rodgers killed. And that ain't going to play very well with Aaron Rodgers. Like, he had the bad body language going on. He had some snippy remark after the game about maybe hold these guys accountable. I mean, this is what we talked about, Fitz, in the offseason. Like, if this starts to go bad for the Jets because they're the Jets, because it's that market, because it's Aaron Rodgers, it's going to become a deal. It's going to become this like bigger than just losing a game at home to the Denver Broncos type of deal where everything gets dissected. This was a really, really bad day for the Jets. Really bad. I do need to say before obviously credit to the Broncos, their defense playing really, really well. If we're voting on Defensive Player of the Year right now, cornerbacks don't usually get that kind of love. Patrick Surtain is the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL right now. He is just erasing guys out of the game. Garrett Wilson was a ghost in this game. Patrick Surtain, they go into the game plan. Vance Joseph, their defensive coordinator, they come into the meeting on Wednesday and he says, Patrick, take this guy out of the game. And I'm sure Surtain is like, okay, no problem. He's erasing guys like the height of Revis Island and Champ Bailey and all the great cornerbacks. That's what Patrick Surtain is doing. It's rare for a cornerback to transform a team, but Patrick Surtain kind of has. And if you have a vote right now for Defensive Player of the Year after 4 games, I guess it's ridiculous. Patrick Surtain's the guy.
Yeah, and it's amazing because that allows everybody else to focus on everything else. And you're right, they absolutely shut down the Jets offense in every way, shape, or form. It was raining and gross. I can hear Jets fans screaming about that, but it was raining and gross for both teams. And if you're the Jets, being 2-2 at this point in the season feels like a disaster. It feels like a disaster waiting to happen.
It's bad. It's a bad loss for the New York Jets. There's no other way to put it. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to disparage the Denver Broncos or anything. Good win for them. Sean Payton always kind of finds a way to squeeze out more wins than he should. But this is more about the Jets and just it's a bad day for them. A really, really a big setback for them in wanting to be the team they want to be. You're not going to be a Super Bowl team if you're losing 10-9 at home to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, they're also about to take on, for the next 3 weeks, the Vikings, the Bills, and the Steelers. Like, I know the Steelers don't have anything on offense, but the Vikings, the Bills, the Steelers, they're going to get tested for 3 straight weeks. Like, as we've said repeatedly, when it goes bad, it will go bad in a big, big way. The next 3 games could make this go bad in a big, big way. And it's not that I'm rooting against the Jets. I just love chaos. So part of me, Frank, I'm going to be honest. I just want the chaos. I want to see what happens when this whole thing implodes and a bunch of people that spent the entire offseason just loudly chirping about the Jets going to the Super Bowl somehow are then going to have to turn around and eat a lot of crow. I want this in my life because it feels like, to me, it feels maybe that makes me vindictive. I don't know. I just want to see what happens when everybody starts crying about the Jets. We'll see. People are crying at this point about the Colts. I just mentioned that the Steelers are upcoming. Well, the Colts get bad news, good news sort of situation. The Colts get a big win against the Steelers for sure. Anthony Richardson injured in this game. Joe Flacco comes out 16 of 26, 168 yards. Joe Flacco out there doing Joe Flacco things. But this is worst case scenario. Again, Anthony Richardson needs to get in and play. He's been inconsistent when he does. They lose him, they win the game. But if you're the Colts today, you're probably pretty worried about your quarterback and the frequency of the injuries.
Yes, 4 out of 8 games he has been knocked out before the end of the game. Hasn't been able to finish. Like that's a thing now. And, it was probably irresponsible for Shane Steichen to put him right back in 2 plays after he obviously hurt his hip and then he just couldn't run on it. It was a bad look there. But the one thing I thought, as somebody who maybe dabbled on the Pittsburgh Steelers today, with Joe Flacco, and I hate to say this kind of puts it into perspective. When I saw Joe Flacco coming in the game, I'm like, I'm screwed. This is bad. And how bad is that to say about a 39-year-old guy coming in? Anthony Richardson's supposed to be your dude, and yet I was much more worried when Joe Flacco's coming into the game because I knew what he was going to do. He's going to run that offense really well. He's going to complete passes. He's going to keep that team ahead of the chains and generally have a good offense where with Richardson, it's trick or treat, right? Like, oh, here's a 65-yard pass downfield, and here's an interception into triple coverage. And Joe Flacco's not going to give that to you. And at some point, there's just going to be a like, should we play Joe Flacco? Like, he's running the offense better. If assuming Richardson's injury isn't serious, it doesn't seem to be. I just don't know. Like, every single one of these bad performances by Anthony Richardson, you're going to start to wonder if just he's not ready yet. And him getting knocked out of games early is bad too. So it was a great win for the Colts and Jonathan Taylor looked great again and all that kind of stuff. But I almost come out of this game saying this opens up a can of worms for the Colts, not just with Richardson's health being an issue game after game, but also that offense looked a lot better with Joe Flacco running it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And on the other side of it, the Steelers got to figure out how to run the football. I mean, this was an ugly, ugly game. Najee Harris, 13 carries, 19 yards, a long of 5 in this one. I mean, and frankly, Justin Fields was the only offense they had. And so the passing game actually didn't look terrible in this game, but Justin Fields was being asked to do everything. I was a little surprised that they couldn't get anything going on the ground. There doesn't feel like there's a lot of balance right now. So the Steelers take their first loss, but also every time they lose now, there's going to be that look over the sideline. It's like, well, is this the moment that Russ takes back the job? Is this the moment they can justify a change? I got to stress here, I don't think Justin Fields at all was the reason they lost this football game.
No, he was really, really good. I was actually really impressed with Justin Fields. And if you would have told me that Justin Fields would have 312 yards passing, 55 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, I'd have been like, oh my God, the Colts just got blasted. No, they lose this because Joe Flacco came in and gave the Colts a pretty good offense for a while against that Steelers defense. I thought Fields was really, really good in this game. I think he bought himself some time. But yes, you're right. Like every time they lose, it's going to be this question of, oh, is Russ going to get a shot ever? And not after this game, because I think Fields is really, really good. But yeah, I mean, it's again, if you lose 2 in a row and next week it's kind of reverting Justin Fields' game where he doesn't play well and they score 10 points, then the questions will come. But I thought this was just a strange game for the Steelers where the offense finally showed up. And of all things, the defense against Joe Flacco let them down.
One of the best games of the day, at least most entertaining, was Atlanta, New Orleans. The Falcons get a 26-24 win thanks to a nice long field goal at the end by Koo after a pass interference call that set it up. Like it was just one of those worst case scenarios in the way it all went down. New Orleans takes the loss here, 26-24. And both of these teams now sit at 2-2. This game was really interesting to me because we were so high, obviously, early on the way the Saints exploded into this season, and rightfully so, they did. But today was a little bit more of what we kind of expected. Like, the offense didn't get going the same way. Taysom Hill with a couple of touchdowns, which is never the method that I think that they want to win games that way. By the way, Taysom Hill, thanks for showing up today when I finally put you on my fantasy bench. So it's fine. I'm not mad about it. But the Falcons get the 26-24 win.
It was just such a weird game. By the way, the Falcons are just going to be that team this year, right? That every single game is going to be 30 seconds left and we don't know who wins. Like that's just going to be the Falcons this year. I'm sorry, Falcons fans. You're in for a really long, stressful season because every game so far has come down to the end. Weird game for the Saints in that they muff a punt that's recovered in the end zone for a touchdown. They give up a pick six to a linebacker, Troy Anderson. I mean, I thought they all played the Falcons and lost here. It doesn't matter. You lost. And the difference is huge. Instead of being 3-1, the Saints, they're 2-2. Instead of the Falcons being 1-3, they're 2-2. Like that Young Hui Koo kick was such a big shift in the NFC South and a pretty gutsy call by Raheem Morris. They get sort of on the range of Koo's, how long he can kick it. They don't get any more yards. Koo's career long at that point was 54 yards, and Raheem Morris has to make a choice. Do I send him out for 58? He is a very good kicker, or do I just go for it because I don't think he can hit from 58? He never has in his career. He sends Koo out there. Koo just drills it with 2 seconds left. What a clutch kick that kind of changes the Falcons season. Again, there's a big difference between being 2-2 with a win over the Saints and 1-3 with a loss against the Saints, a team that's going to be in the NFC South mix all year. So a strange game for the Falcons, but I think they're going to be in for strange games all season. It just seems to be their DNA already.
Yeah, I feel like you're right about that, and I feel like it's going to be an up and down year for the Saints too. They needed that win by the way, in part because Tampa Bay went out and got themselves to 3-1 by way of a thorough butt whooping of Philadelphia. 33-16 is the final score on that in a game that just never felt even that close. I want to freak out. I want to do the whole Kermit the Frog about the Eagles, but also like the Eagles are a shell of themselves right now. I think we just have to admit that the Eagles' best case scenarios are going to tread water until they can sort of get healthy in a year that nobody's healthy. I want to put a lot of context around this, Frank, because it's a big win for Tampa Bay. I take nothing away from that, but also I don't know what we really expect from the Eagles right now.
Yes, exactly. It would make for good inside coverage for me to be like, hey, Eagles are terrible. They're not. I talked last week about how I wasn't really impressed with the Eagles. A lot of people on that Instagram post, hey, those comments haven't aged that well, but I'm not freaking out about them now. Like, I just think they're kind of an underwhelming, good, not great football team that's dealing with a ton of injuries. Their bye is in week 5. So you could see this coming. At least I did. I looked at their injury report and said, with their bye in week 5, there's no chance they're playing Lane Johnson. There's no chance they're playing A.J. Brown with that hamstring. And Devontae Smith has got concussions. He's probably not going to play. So they're going into this game with, I couldn't even name their receivers going into the game. Like, I know Johnny Wilson had a touchdown and he's an exciting rookie and all that, but they were so shorthanded in this game that if you're paying any attention to the Eagles injury report, you could kind of see this coming. The Eagles weren't just going to go and roll the Tampa Bay Buccaneers without any receivers, without Lane Johnson. They're really, really good right tackles. So I don't have any different opinion of the Eagles today than I did a week ago after they won. It's like, yeah, the Eagles are good, but they're very flawed and they're not as good as probably Philly fans think they are. They're fine. They could get better as the season goes on and they get healthier, but they're not a great football team right now. They weren't a great football team that should have lost to the Saints probably last week. They're a work in progress that needs to get healthy. Whereas the Buccaneers, I wonder if we're kind of excusing these teams a little bit, like, oh, it was just a blip last week against the Broncos. Maybe the Broncos just have a really good defense. Like that, maybe that's just going to be their DNA this season, is that they just shut down a lot of teams. And you look back and you're like, well, yeah, the common thread here is the Broncos. Like, they played pretty well because it looked like the Buccaneers team for weeks 1 and 2 played really well. Mike Evans got a touchdown. Bucky Irving looked good. I think he's going to be really good for them this season. A big win for Tampa Bay to rebound, and just kind of one of those spots for the Eagles where you could kind of see it coming with all the injuries they have.
Yeah, Baker 30 of 47 for 347, 2 touchdowns. Really efficient game for him.
They do have a defensive problem. We are excusing the Eagles for their offensive injuries, and I get that. Their defense stinks right now. Like, their defense is not good. Like, okay, let's be real. Like, there are things on their defense they cannot do well. They can't. They proved again today. It looked exactly like late last season, where their cornerback just can't really cover anybody.
Yeah, and that's not going to fix itself. Like, suddenly, those are things that don't get fixed quickly in the middle of the season. You're doomed on that one. One other result that stood out, finally, the Bears show some offense. An interesting offensive game for the Bears. The Bears get a 24-18 win over the Rams. And it was really an interesting game to me because we put so much, quarterback, we always say wins and losses, not a quarterback stat. But this felt like there was a much different approach to the way they were handling their offense. Caleb Williams comes out and is efficient in this game. But really, this was the DeAndre Swift game. 16 carries for 93 yards, 7 catches for 72 yards. It felt like they came in and said, hey, let's use your safety net. Let's get used to just get the ball out of your hands, get it to DeAndre Swift and see where it goes. And it worked against the Rams team that we all know is also decimated by injuries now.
Yes, I was thinking about you and the discussions we've had the last few Sunday nights about what are the Bears doing? Why is everything on Caleb Williams' shoulders? Well, in this game, 23 handoffs to running backs, 23 passes for Caleb Williams. Thank you. Thank you, Bears. Let's not ruin this kid already. All right. Like, that is what you need to do. Their offense looked a lot better. But part of that is DeAndre Swift. Like you said, like, we can sit here and talk about balance. Well, if DeAndre Swift is averaging 2 yards a carry, there's no sense in balance. Like, you're not going to run it on 3rd and 6 after you've gained 4 yards on your first 2 rushes. DeAndre Swift showed up in this game. A lot of questions about whether Roschon Johnson should take over. He looked pretty good too, but Swift needed this kind of game, and the Bears needed this kind of game to take things off of Caleb's plate. I thought he played really, really well. He played efficient. He played smart. He wasn't running around everywhere trying to do everything like he's been at times this season. This was the approach the Bears need to have, period. This is really smart, really good. Jayden Daniels, I guess, is just Superman, and he's going to be awesome all season. That's not normal for a rookie. What's normal for a rookie is what you saw out of Caleb Williams today. I thought he took huge strides, but part of those huge strides were the Bears coaching staff finally figuring out this is how we need to play football with a rookie quarterback.
We will get to the rest of the Slate Plus preview Monday night. We'll do that when we come back. All right, did Carolina come down to earth? Is Cincinnati really good? The Bengals take down Carolina 34-24. And this is rare, Frank, where I'm sitting there and I got a game on and I'm watching it. And the whole time when it finishes, I just say, huh. Like, that's all I really had. Like, huh. There was nothing one way or the other that really swayed me on either of these teams. I don't have more faith in the Bengals. I don't have less faith in the Panthers. It's just a weird blasé game to me.
It did kind of take the air out of the balloon I was trying to blow up over the week of, hey, maybe the Panthers are secretly good with Andy Dalton at quarterback. No, not really. Like, yeah, their offense still looked a lot better than it did with Bryce Young, but it's still a deeply flawed team. And the Bengals, I was the same way, where I came out of that game saying, okay, how really did the Bengals win that? Because I don't remember like Joe Burrow playing great. And they ran it pretty well with their 2 running backs. I kind of look at the box score and I'm just kind of like, okay, they just kind of played well enough to beat a bad team. So good for the Bengals. You don't want to go 0-4, obviously. This keeps them relevant. It makes their hole they're digging out of a lot less. But I don't come out of this game saying, oh, the Bengals are back. I don't come out of this game saying like, oh, the Panthers are going to be anything. Like, it's just kind of who we are. Like, it's just like, okay, well, we'll see next week. We'll see if he can build on this Bengals, and we'll see if the Panthers can still be a competent NFL football team with Andy Dalton at quarterback.
I mean, the Bengals had balance, 31 passes, 31 rushes. Great. The Bengals got T. Higgins involved in a big way, and Jamar Chase had one of those highlight, oh my God, Jamar Chase moments. Like, everything you expect from the Bengals. And I'm still not sitting here saying, yippee, huzzah.
Yeah. Like, the defense still wasn't good in this game. Like, Chuba, it seemed like he had like 1,000,000 yards. I don't know what he ended up with at the end of the day, but Andy Dalton was still throwing the ball to Deontay Johnson.
18 carries, 104 yards. And as a team, 29 carries, 155 yards. They averaged just over 5 yards a carry.
And Trey Hendrickson got banged up in this game, which even more problems for their defensive line. So, yeah, the Bengals, good to get a win. Their offense looked fine. Defense did look great. There's still a lot of things to work on, but it's a lot easier to do that at 1-3 than 0-4.
Yeah, well, 2-2 feels a lot better than 1-3, even when it's UGLY. And that would bring me to my beloved Raiders, who beat Cleveland 20-16 in a game that was just ugly. I mean, Frank, it was ugly. I will say that. But anytime, if you told me coming into the morning that there would be no Max Crosby for the first time in his career, didn't even go with the team. Like, he was off on his own to rehab the injury, I should say. And then you've got no Devontae Adams. In fact, the Raiders missing 6 starters total from what they expected at the beginning of this season. They turned in this game into a 20-16 win where they were re-energized. I have to, as hard as I was in Antonio Pierce a week ago, this was a team that came out and played with fire. They came out with a lot of passion. They had little moments, but let's be real, for the most part, it's sort of the same thing. Like, these are two teams that both have defensive issues at times on what are supposed to be really good defenses, and they both have quarterback issues all the time. So Like, I just watched this game and I thought, man, this is one of those games where if you were a Browns fan or a Raiders fan, you were watching every second of it. If you happen to be somebody else forced to watch it and this was your first experience in football, I'm sorry.
Yes, I completely agree. This game felt like homework. It was just like, oh, I gotta pay attention to this. Like, it was really not a pretty game. I'll get to your Raiders in a second. This for me, for the Browns, is it's over. Like, you're just not a good team. Like, the Raiders were without by far their most talented offensive player, by far their most talented defensive player, legitimately like a Hall of Fame receiver and a defensive player who should be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation every year. And you still can't beat that team. Raiders team that was incredibly inept running the ball, all of a sudden rushes for like 150 something. Like, Browns are just bad. Like, you're just I said all off season, like, this Browns team is really, really good. All they need is a quarterback to be okay. And now we're 4 weeks in and I'm like, no, the Browns stink. Like, they're just bad in every single way you can be bad as a football team. I get it. There's injuries. I do. But a lot of teams are dealing with injuries. And you're not losing to a Raiders team without Max Crosby and Devontae Adams. Like, this is just a bad football team. And I don't think it's really going to get better for them. Raiders, though, I mean, like, this is kind of, like you said, I was hard on Antonio Pierce all week saying, hey, is there any substance behind this, Antonio? Like, he came out and business decisions and he benched Jack Jones for a quarter. Okay, whatever. Like, but this team did play hard. I think they got the message. He is a good motivator, and he had them ready to play without some really key players, had them running the ball, which he said had to get better. So a positive day for the Raiders for sure, just to get a win, although they do it against a Browns team that is much, much, much worse than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, I am reminded now next week will be the Raiders versus the Broncos in a game that might actually set offense like on fire. I don't know. Maybe both teams just punt every single drive. All right, let's get to what I thought was one of the bigger games of the afternoon slate, particularly Houston taking on Jacksonville. Houston gets a 24-20 win. And I mean, this game was in question for a lot of it. I was, as bad as things look right now for Jacksonville, they played. I mean, they came out and they tried. I know that sounds so condescending, but this
really
wasn't
does.
Jacksonville. They really tried.
You get them a medal at the end of the game. You tried. Hey.
But I was watching the game thinking, like this was a different version of the Jags. They came out a little bit fired up. I think they understand their backs are against the wall, and the Texans didn't necessarily have the cleanest game, but they still get a win.
That's the thing. If Jacksonville is like 2-1 coming into this game and you lose something like that, you're like, okay, well, you played really hard at the Houston, whatever. Well, you're 0-4. Like, he blew a game at the end in the last minute. And I'll tell you, I thought it was a key moment. Did you go to Buffalo Wild Wings this week, by the way?
Yeah.
It's great.
You've got me hooked.
I'm at Buffalo Wild Wings in beautiful Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And on 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, the Jacksonville Jaguars come out in an empty set, 5 receivers. And immediately I say out loud in my seat at Buffalo Wild Wings, oh, Trevor Lawrence is running up the middle. And what happens? Trevor Lawrence runs right up the middle and they stuff it. And if I, sitting in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, can call out the Jaguars play, maybe you're a little too predictable. Maybe you need to spice things up a little bit, right? But this is just right now a coaching staff that looks like it's just done. Like, I can't, like, at this moment, like I said this about Matt Eberflus last season, so it's not always true. But at this moment, I can't see Doug Peterson surviving the season. I don't even know if he survives October. Like, this is, and then he gets into the whole, like, well, the players got to execute it. We're putting the plays out there. Like, okay, now you're throwing your players under the bus. And he was like, oh, the fourth down call is a moot point. Like, what? Like, that basically lost you the football game. Like, he just seems like a guy who's absolutely grasping at straws. They're 0-4. This was a bad loss for them. I get it. I do understand what you mean by they played better than they have the past few weeks. They took a really, really good Titans team to the wire on the road, but it doesn't matter. You're 0-4, and all I see is this is a predictable, bland, poorly coached team that blew a game in the last minute. Now you're done. Like, you're pretty much irrelevant the rest of the season until you fire Doug Peterson, and then we talk about you for a little bit more.
Whenever there's a 4th down play like that, we always hear people yell, put the ball in your best player's hands. And I understand that there's some that will say, hey, they put the ball in Trevor Lawrence's hands. The goal is to put the ball in the best player's hands in a situation where they can actually do something with it. On that design quarterback draw, there's nothing. There's only one outcome. Like, you don't have really a chance. He doesn't have a chance to flick it to somebody. He doesn't have the chance to try and extend it and make it a play. There's no opportunity for him to actually be a quarterback in that situation. It makes no sense to me.
They don't have to fear Travis Etienne on a play action. They don't have to, like, it's just, and again, I was like, this is obvious what they're doing. Everybody sees this, right? Like, they ran an obvious play. Like, What are
I
we
think,
doing
though,
here?
Frank,
It's just bad. It's bad football. It was bad football by the Jaguars.
my issue is not that I'm not afraid of the Jags. That's fine. They're not good. My issue is I'm not afraid of Trevor Lawrence. At some point, as much money as Trevor Lawrence is getting paid, let's be honest here, nobody's sitting there saying, oh, God, guys, man, we got to take on Trevor Lawrence this week. How are we ever going to win that game? And at some point, they're going to have to answer the why of that. Like, they've tried to put weapons around him. They've tried to put a quarterback around him or a coach around him that can help him. They've tried all of these things. I am not afraid of Trevor Lawrence. I am afraid. When I'm watching that game, I'm thinking, man, you don't want to give C.J. Stroud the chance to win this game. He will. I never once thought that about Trevor Lawrence.
Never. And you'd pick Jayden Daniels over Trevor Lawrence right now, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it's not even a question. And one guy's making $55 million a year. Like, okay. Well, there's a play. Brian Thomas ran a great route. He's a really good young rookie receiver. He runs a great route. And he's wide open. And Trevor missed him by like 5 yards. It's like, I get it. It's not a layup to complete a 50, 60-yard pass in the NFL. We act like it is, but it's not, no matter how open your receiver is. But yet, you're the $55 million guy. You have a receiver wide open screaming down the middle of the field, and you miss him. Like, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even like he could dive for it. Like, it was like, that's Trevor Lawrence right there. Like, there's plays to be made. You need to make them. You're supposed to be that dude.
If Brock Purdy misses the same pass, we are destroying Brock Purdy. And to be clear, I would take Brock Purdy over Trevor Lawrence right now.
I think so too. As much as I got in trouble for the whole, like, I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy, and we could argue about that later because I still really kind of believe it in my heart. Yeah, I'd take Brock Purdy over Trevor Lawrence right now. I know what I'm getting out of Brock Purdy, at least.
Yeah, the inconsistency, what is the thing right now that Trevor Lawrence does that will just beat you? Like, we know what Aaron Rodgers does, even know the way his body language is going to look. When you're about to get beat on an Aaron Rodgers play, you know it. When you're about to get beat by Patrick Mahomes, when you know it. I would argue even like there are certain things that Justin Herbert does. Justin hasn't won a lot of games. Like, so he's in that same category of doesn't win a lot. But there are things that Justin Herbert does that you're like, man, I don't know how you stop that. I don't even know what that is for Trevor Lawrence at this point.
No, it's just so long since he played well. That second half of the 2022 season when he got fired and he was really good. Like, where's that Trevor gone? Like, because that guy, the guy who you go back and you look at that overtime game against Dallas, you say that's a top 5 quarterback. Where's he been? Like, there's just so much inconsistency, and maybe it is a coaching staff, and maybe it is a supporting cast. And there's that Trevor Lawrence hive I've talked about that just defends him at every single possibility. But it's just not happening. Once you sign that contract for $275 million over 5 years, you're got to be that dude. I'm sorry. Like, I can't give you any more excuses. When you're making $55 million a year, it's just the buck stops with you. And if your team is 0-4, well, that's on you. I can't make excuses for you anymore.
One more game from the Sunday slate. San Francisco creams New England 30-13. Beautiful touchdown catch by George Kittle, who was, I think, triple covered at the time. Wasn't it? I mean, that was just slinging sex. And then, like, Christian McCaffrey, obviously a system running back at this point, because Jordan Mason again goes off 24 carries, 123 yards. I'm joking, McCaffrey fans, don't come at me. But the other part of this is I just want to scream from the mountaintop something that Gronk actually said on TV after the game for everybody that thinks, got to get Drake May in there now. No, you do not. Drake May will get murdered behind this offensive line. This would not be pleasant. This would not be good. Right now, what they should be doing is giving Jacoby Brissett a raise. Not for the way he's playing quarterback, but for the fact that he's willingly taking this pounding and this pounding of his reputation and the pounding of his opportunity in the league. Like, he's getting beat down in a way that his body is going to feel for the rest of his life so that Drake May doesn't have to. Like, that is the ultimate sacrifice for a team, because I don't think the result would be any different. And if they put Drake May back there, they'll ruin the kid. So Jacoby Brissett, tip of the hat to you to being willing to just get beat up every single week so that the future quarterback of the organization doesn't have to.
You know what question I had going through my mind the whole time I'm watching, every time I looked up at that ugly game? How on earth did the Bengals lose to this team? How on earth did the Bengals lose to the Patriots? They are like, we were like, I was doing the mea culpa thing, like, oh, I'm sorry, Patriots fans, you're not really the worst team of football. Yeah, you are. You are by far the worst team of football. You're awful right now. That Patriots team stinks. Like, they're exactly what we thought they would be. They can't block anybody. The fact that the Jets ran them over 2 weeks ago, we thought was a good thing for the Jets. Well, now it looks kind of like it's just the Patriots are bad. This is not a football team that's ready to win in any single way, and they're just going to be bad the rest of the season. I'm sorry, Patriots fans. You can come at me if you go on another 2-game winning streak or something later. I'll take all the heat. As I sit here right now, that is the worst team I see week in and week out, and I do not know how they beat the Bengals or almost beat the Seahawks. I wonder what that means for the Seahawks, honestly. The 49ers, I'll give it up. Look, I will admit when I'm wrong. I am not willing to take the ultimate L yet. I'd say, like, don't pay Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy's looked great the last couple of weeks. Like, without some of his key guys, and even, Brandon Ayuk's still not there yet, and Deebo Samuel was coming off the injury, and even Kittle, like, he looked fine today, but Purdy just is moving well. He talked about his athleticism today. He's got just enough athleticism to get by, but he's making plays. He looks really, really good. And so when this 49ers team does kind of come together, when the defensive line gets healthier, when McCaffrey's back and all these reps Brock Purdy's getting, playing at this really, I think, a higher level than he did last year. I think this is really going to pay off for the 49ers. And he's taking strides. I cannot deny that in any way.
They are decimated by injuries. They have the Cardinals coming up, and then I have to read this slate of games, right? They have the Cardinals coming up, and then they have a Thursday night game against the Seahawks, which will be tough. That run starts a run where it's Seahawks, Chiefs, Cowboys, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Packers, Bills. Wow. You want to talk about a prove-it stretch of the schedule?
That's fun.
Brock Purdy's going to earn his $50 million over the course of the next 2 months. This is it. He's not going to have the help. There isn't a lot there for him, and he's going to have to play lights-out, efficient football, not just to win these games, but for the 49ers to survive this stretch. It's one of the most difficult stretches you could see on the schedule. I'm excited to see where it goes. Monday Night Football, we have a doubleheader. I hate those. The first game is maybe the only game for the rest of the year where Will Levis will be the best quarterback on the field. The Titans taking on Miami. I'm not going to stop on Will Levis because he's trash.
You're Joe DiMaggio right now. Just cranking out that streak, man. I love it.
There isn't a show where I don't remind the world that the Titans would be much better if Will Levis could fix playing stupid football. They take on Miami. Miami is a 2.5-point favorite, and it's unconfirmed at this point. I think Kermit the Frog is actually the quarterback at this point. Look, Tyler Huntley. We have no idea. Like this could be anybody. Andy Reid might step in and just play quarterback, and then it'd be questionable. Will Levis wouldn't be the best quarterback on the field at that point. So, who do you like in this Tennessee-Miami matchup?
Yeah, we forget. We have these fond memories of Tyler Huntley playing quarterback for the Ravens when in actuality he had these 2 or 3 good games a couple of years ago, and really the rest has been pretty ugly for him. But what other choice does Miami have? Like playing an injured Skylar Thompson? That ain't going to get him anywhere. So this is kind of my last stand with the Titans. I think the Titans are going to win this game. And if they don't, at that point, you're just like, okay, well, maybe we do need to change quarterbacks. Maybe we just need to change everything. Because if we can't beat Tyler Huntley, who was signed out the Ravens practice or wherever he was practice squad just 10 days ago or whatever, then we're just not going anywhere this season. We got to reevaluate everything. This would be a bad loss for the Titans. You'd excuse Miami if they lost this because they're just not the same team without Tua. So I'm interested to see what happens. And if the Titans lose this, it's honestly season over at that point. You're just kind of scrambling to see what you could save the rest of the year if you can't beat Tyler Huntley fresh off of somebody's practice squad starting for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I think the Titans are going to win this game, and I think Will Levis is still going to stink on Tuesday.
Probably.
The other Monday night game is the much more difficult one to predict. Seattle at Detroit, the Lions are 4-point favorite. Here's my issue with Seattle is that they've played nobody, right? Like their wins at this point have been over absolutely nobody. And so while we have seen production and we expect more of that in the course of Monday night, I really don't know, man, because it's hard for me when you've taken on bad teams, maybe decent defenses, but you've taken on bad teams to really have a gauge of where you are. This is the first chance I think we'll get to see exactly who Seattle is and how competitive they are.
I will say this. I think the Lions win big, and everybody's going to say exactly what you said. Oh, Seattle got exposed. They didn't play anybody. The reason I think Seattle's really in a tough spot here is they have so many injuries on the defensive line. Byron Murphy and Mafe and a lot of their guys on the defensive line are out. And when you have that kind of cluster injury against a really good offensive line, against a really good offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, he is going to pick you apart however he wants to do it. If it's going to be a David Montgomery 130-yard game, that's what they're going to do because they can control you up front. If it's going to be Jared Goff dropping back 50 times because he can't get a pass rush on him anyway, then that's what they're going to decide to do. Seattle's in a rough spot with their defensive injuries. I don't think it's going to be pretty for them on Monday night. But I will say, everything's contextual, and we're going to watch the game and see how it unfolds. But I can already envision myself on Wednesday or whenever we get back to this conversation saying, don't give up on Seattle yet. I get it. Their wins aren't quality, but this is still a pretty good team that just had a horrible, horrible spot to be in at Detroit with all these injuries.
Yeah, and by the way, I think Seattle has a great head coach at this point. I'd love to see this work out, and I think they have a ton of talent. Nothing takes anything away from that. We just haven't actually seen them play anybody. Seattle, to me, is going to end up in the category of very good. The Lions are going to end up in the category of great. That's the difference here. Stone is really great. We're very good. Stone, our producer behind the scenes, he's the great one. He makes all of this sound like magic. We appreciate him and all of his work. Follow us on Twitter, at Jason Fitz, at Yahoo Schwab. Make sure that you're hanging out with us on social media. We are out there all the time. And we'll be back Wednesday hanging out with Jory. As always, rate, subscribe, review, tell your friends, your family, your enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. Happy Sunday. I hope it was as happy for you as it was for us. We appreciate you giving us your time to break down the games.